So it's the day to shoot. I wouldn't normally walk to location. I'd have a car a lot bigger than that one. You need lots and lots of kit when you're doing interviews. Well, I do. I have too much kit. But you do need, obviously, the key things. Camera, tripod, audio, and lights. So we arrive at the location. I don't bring my gear in straight away normally. I like to say hello, shake hands, get a cup of coffee, and then ask, where is the room? Before I bring the gear in. So I'm shown, I have a look, and quite frequently I will pull this face. Rather than try and make a room that doesn't work, do the very simple thing. Ask if there are any other options. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be shy. Ask that question, and hopefully you'll end up with a much better location for your interview. Like this. Yeah, thank you. This is much better. Before you start setting up your camera and your lights, you need to go through these key things. Actually, making sure we have a good background is probably the most important thing. When it comes to light, of course we can add our own lights, but if the background doesn't work, then the background doesn't work. Then it comes to checking what sort of light we have. If you're in a studio, it obviously can be completely blacked out, but in a room like this, a real living room, what do we have? We have big windows here, and we have some practicals. When it comes to the practicals, what I do is I turn them on, and then I turn them off again. The next thing is to make sure there's no distracting sound. So just listen. Bit loud.
What am I supposed to do?
With a big light source like this window, be really careful because sun comes in, sun comes out depending on what's going on outside. And this causes us real problems because the amount of light coming in here constantly changes, which is going to affect our shots. We need a continuity of light. The ideal sky for continuity of light is really a nice cloudy sky, no breaks in the clouds at all. It's like a nice big softbox. We get that in England quite a lot, so it's really good. Blue skies are nice because we do have some sun coming in sometimes, but again, continuity of light because the sun is constantly changing, so we can have shadows and things like that. That broken cloud is a complete nightmare. It does change our shot so much. And in that situation, what can you do? Well, maybe close the curtains. Other than that, maybe look for another location. But can we make this work? Let's try it. If you do have a nice blue sky and sun and you want to see how it's going to affect your shot, where the sun will be at any given point in any day, there's loads of great apps out there. I use one on my iPhone called Sunseeker. It's really useful. I was director of photography on a feature documentary called How to Start a Revolution. And for 5 days, we interviewed the person who the film was about, Gene Sharp, and we interviewed him in his office. And so we could have that continuity of light all the way through, completely blacked out all of the natural light sources and lit it from scratch. That way I could have a total continuity of light. So now we need to figure out where we're going to put our interviewee. I'm thinking of doing 2 interviews in here. What is my background going to be? What are they going to be sat on? Looking straight away, I can see that the main seating areas, the sofa here and this sofa here, both have walls against them, which means we have no real depth to the shot. So we need to decide whether we're going to start moving furniture or maybe bring a chair in. Try and get into the habit of trying to find your shot, your background, your position with your eyes. It's way quicker than putting up your camera and tripod and finding your shot that way. Now we've figured out our room, the light, and our positioning with the background, we can bring in our gear and start setting it up. Knowing how to light for a talking head and interview is really important. You need to understand the core concept of 3-point lighting. And the easiest way for me to explain that is in a nice darkened room. Not this one, this one. So here we go, 2 candles in the background. And now here's Sarah, lit by the key light, our main light. Quite side on, and you can see a lot of modelling on the side of her face, not very flattering for her, and that's why this fill light has come on. And that fill light is of a lower intensity than the key light.
Otherwise, it will just be very, very flat. Now the thing is, we do have a difference in colour on the background, but we still need to bring up that edge of her side of her head there, and that's what that edge light or backlight is for. This is our traditional standard 3-point lighting. So let's take them away so you can see them separately. First off, let's remove our key light. So now we have just our fill and our backlight. Let's remove the fill, and here we are, that's just our backlight. Now in an ideal world, we'd like that to be a little bit more over to the center, but if you don't have a boom arm light stand, you're going to get that light stand in shot, so it is a little bit to the side. And now she's gone. One of the things you really want to try and do is see those eyes come to life, and that's that catch light. You can see the reflection in Sarah's eyes. You can see the reflection of the two lights, the key light and of course the fill light. It's something we talk about throughout the series. You need to know the rules so you know how you can break the rules. In last episode it was the line. Here it's all about lighting. I very, very rarely will do 3-point lighting. Most times it's either 1 or 2 lights, and often that additional light, the second one, is natural. It's about trying to set the right mood, and it is really dependent on the location. I always do have enough lights to do 3-point lighting and more, but of course the more lights you put up, the longer it's going to take.
I like to communicate. I like to...
This interview here for the man from Medina is quite flat. We do have light on the key side coming in from camera right, a little bit brighter there, and the fill was actually from a window. We had nice continuous light outside.
A lot of people are saying, oh my goodness, we're going to have Cuban cigars. There'll be a lot of people that...
Here on Marvin, we have some light from indoors, practical light, but we do have a little LED panel over on the left hand side, camera left, and you can see it is bringing up a catch light in his eye.
I like to see the scratch, you know, or the line.
This interview with Ridwan, I didn't actually have any lights with me. This is a practical light, a side light which is bounced off the wall, and the catch light is purely a piece of paper being held up by somebody for me to create a reflection. Not a true catch light, but it looks like it.
Yeah.
In my country, we didn't have like money to go boxing club, but we was to fight with kids, with each other, you know.
And finally, in Portrait of a Boxer, my lighting on Festim is about as far away from conventional as you can get. He is lit. I have an 800-watt red head pointing down from quite high up. We've got no catch light in his eyes, we can't see his face. We're actually quite far away from him, and there's a lot of empty space on the side of the frame. The whole frame and the lighting is to create a feeling of discomfort for the viewer. You don't want to feel warm and fuzzy, not with Festim.
It's better doing boxing than doing those things.
So I have 2 lights here. They are clearly not set up correctly because they're not pointing at Sarah. She is here. Now I've got my rough idea for the background. I've put an additional chair in here to get some depth. She's not quite in the right space yet, so getting your interviewee to sit down before you're ready is not a good idea. Don't do this. Sarah, can you just move that way a bit? Chair. A bit more right. Left. Back a bit. Forward a bit. Right a bit. Back a bit. Big bit. Keep going. 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 And now left. Left. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. A bit more left. 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 Stop. Stop. Great. That's almost good. I mean, Julian's in the way right now. That's fine, as long as he stays there and doesn't move like a statue. This is roughly my frame. Sarah is now incredibly annoyed with me. What I should have done was find my spot and then say, come in. What's really difficult though is lining up your shot and lighting it when you don't have somebody to sit in for you. It can be a bit tricky. And often what I do is I find a spot, I sit down, I hit record, I come back and have a look. It's a bit of a pain and a bit slow. But if you don't have a stand-in, what else are you going to do? So we have our light from the back there. This is essentially going to be our backlight. It is in frame. We do have this big window, but Sarah is left the frame looking to the right, which means the interviewee is going to be this side. So my key light needs to be this side too. So I'm going to use this window as my fill, and because it is nice and cloudy, that light is going to be continuous. So let's get our lights set up. So I switched to this 75mm lens, more of a portrait length lens, to get a nice medium close up of Sarah. It's almost lit, it's not quite right yet. I haven't got the main light yet. I'm not going to use this backlight. I do still have 3-point lighting though. I have my key, my backlight is that window, and I have the fill, which is that main window. So what am I going to set my white balance to in this room? Well, you set it to the most predominant light, and that is clearly the windows, which is daylight. So my additional lighting is also going to be set to daylight to make it look as natural as possible. The great thing about lots of these modern lights, especially LEDs, they are bi-color, and that's going to make things a lot easier. So this little one is a bi-color, and it's currently set to 5600 Kelvin, and you can see the color temperature matches Sarah. Now, if I make this tungsten, of course my camera is actually balanced for daylight, so it's not going to look very nice, which I can change. Let me set it to tungsten. Even though I'm balanced tungsten on the camera now, and I do have the light, because it's not a very bright light, the predominant light source is still that window. It's looking quite blue in there. The closer I get to her, the more natural the skin tones will look. But you can see it looks really weird with that blue behind her. I want things to be nice and natural, so keep it daylight, match the light source. I've put a softbox onto the LED, which is going to soften the light to make it a little bit more flattering. And I love the thing about LEDs is the ability to change the intensity. So this is the light all the way to its full brightness, which is incredibly uncomfortable for Sarah and completely overkill. If I actually change my exposure to match that, the background becomes too dark, and that's no good for me. I want the light to match the background, so I'm going to bring it down to about here, change our exposure. Yeah, I think that's looking quite nice, apart from Julian. To soften the light even more, I pointed it at the wall. And this is the great thing about light walls, is they bounce. And this has given me an even softer light on Sarah. And looking really nice. The only thing I think is slightly wrong with the frame is not Julian, it's just Sarah. Your hair's a bit messy on the right hand side. Have you got a brush? This is just it. Back. Great, that's good. We've established that Sarah is left the frame looking to the right, which is this side of the camera. How high do you have the camera? Well, you ideally have it the same height as both the interviewer and the interviewee. The great thing about sitting down is it does equalize heights, especially if you know me at 6'2" and Sarah at 5'6"-ish. There will be a big height difference. So it's a little bit like this, maybe slightly exaggerated, so this was no good. But if I'm down here, it's nice and natural. Of course, if I'm too low and too short, that's no good at all. You need to be the same height. So what I need is a chair, and the chair that's going to match that chair is another one of those. So now I have the light as I want it. It looks great, especially as Julian has now left the frame. All I need to do now is do the interview, but I'm not doing that now. This is just to have a look at the lighting. Julian and Sarah have now swapped. Sarah is on camera. Julian is our stand-in to show you a bit of lighting on men, which tends to be a bit more modelling. We don't have the light on right now. As you can see, Julian is getting a lot of light from the window, but it keeps changing. I'll show you here. That looks quite nice if we framed it more like here. Doesn't look too bad. It looks over towards my hand. Yeah, that's quite nice. But what I'm gonna do is go back to my starting position. I'm framing the door frame around him, so it's a frame into the frame. Julian's going to look towards here, and I'm just going to add that soft light onto his face to give him some fill. Bring my exposure down a little bit. I quite like that. Now what I want to do is add a little bit of light into the background. Of course, Sarah is taking up a bit of the space there, so it looks a little bit darker. But if we turn the lights on in the hallway, that's really nice. So we've got a nice bit of warmth. I like that framing. So yeah, I think that's really nice. I think we just need to get a little bit of powder on Julian. He's looking a little bit shiny. Did you bring your makeup bag, Julian?
Nope. Sorry.
Whereas Sarah's shot had 3-point lighting, it did have the key, the fill and the backlight, Julian really just has 2-point really. We do have the key, we have a little bit of fill from the window. There is no actual backlight, there is light behind him. 3-point lighting is simply a guide. Just using one light is absolutely fine. It's all about making it look good.
Although this is a music video, the lighting principles are the same. Lighting is lighting, whether it's for an interview, a feature film, or a music video. And the key thing about lighting for me is I want it to feel as natural as possible. And one of my favourite compliments I had on this music video was on Vimeo, where they said, "Why didn't you light it?" And the reason that's a compliment, because I try to make this look as real as possible. Everything here is either lit or is using the light, harnessing the light. Lighting isn't just about putting lights up, it's about working with what is there, making it work for you and your shot. This shot here, for example, is lit, a light above him, a 1x1 panel. This is available light. This has got 2 lights on it. This is lit by the TV. This is lit by 2 light panels. This is lit by 1 light panel. This is natural light. There is a real mixture in here, but I have gone for a deliberate thing, which is to make it look as real as possible. Certain things like this kitchen shot would look awful with the actual real overheads above him, so I recreated a daylight window. This is what you need to think about when lighting. The motivation. We use that word motivation all the time when we're talking about camera movement. It's the same when it comes to light. Where is the light coming from? If you put a light up, does it look real? Does it look like it could be coming from something off frame, or maybe something even in frame? Lighting is a huge topic, and we can only really scratch the surface here. The way I improve my lighting is I'm always watching and learning from other people's work and styles, and of course trying out new things and experimenting.
I sing to understand.